Well, I'm actually really surprised to be making this video because last night I got another dream with Pastor Steve Hill. This makes my second one on yet another date that is significant to Pastor Steve Hill. And to understand what the deal about this is, you have to watch my Spiritual Avalanche backstory that I made about that song, which details several years of significant dates tying in to Pastor Steve Hill concerning the song that I was moved to write. And to be honest, when I got this dream yesterday, I wasn't going to post it, but as usual, I got a little nudge from the Spirit to go ahead, look at the date that I got this dream. And it was kind of like a dare that if I saw that it was related to something of significance, like the other dates, that I would go ahead and post it. Otherwise, I would just not. Well, when I got up today, I went to my computer and I typed in October 8th, which is when I got the dream last night. And I was immediately given something that I couldn't deny. October 8th is an excessively significant date for Pastor Steve Hill, for it was the birth date, the anniversary birth date of his son Ryan, who passed away. He passed away in the year when I believe Steve Hill himself passed away. They've both been in glory for 4 years. I didn't have to search further, because to a parent, the birth date of their child is highly important. So I knew then that this was another thing, another fingerprint in this series of fingerprints of God that all revolve around significant days involving Pastor Steve Hill in some way, in order to connect that God has been behind this whole project. So I'm now then finding myself sitting here to relate to the dream that I got. Now I have to say I remember the end of the dream, because the very bit end of the dream was so distressing to me that I woke up in distress and I forgot the bulk of the dream. However, that could be a God thing, because what really matters is the part that I remember. Now I want to say this dream involves me, but it also in a way sheds light on how when we get to heaven, we don't just sit around and strum harps and dip our toes in the water of life. We are busy. We are on assignments. And this is the second such dream I had with Pastor Hill. And each time I'm dealing with a Pastor Steve Hill after his physical death, when he went on to glory. I'm dealing with the Steve Hill who is in heaven. He's the one coming to me. And this was the same situation last night. Now, normally I go to sleep. My hours can change, but for the most part, I go to sleep after midnight. But I found that I was very tired yesterday, and I rarely sleep at the time that I found I was crawling into bed. I even was in some pain, and it forced me to go to bed. And I can see now, if I had gone my usual time, I would not have been receiving this dream on this pertinent date to Pastor Hill, which is, as I said, it's been a hallmark that these are showing God's fingerprints. I mean, it's not just one, it's about 12, or I don't know how many, too many, okay? You have to watch the whole series to know. It's the number themselves that bear the witness. So I found myself forced to get into bed at 8 o'clock last night, October 8th, 2018, and I was so tired. And I went into a deep sleep. And when I was having this dream, I know that I was amongst some excellent company. I can't remember them all. And because I believe they're not so much pertinent to what I had to witness on this, I wasn't remembering that part. But I do know that I was in a place that was specifically for indoctrination area. And I was outside in this paved area, and there was great men there, like Leonard Ravenhill and other men that were there. They were men who had passed on. These pastors, these great leaders were there. They were there in order to indoctrinate some person who was alive on earth as in this particular situation. This particular situation that I found myself in, I was going to go to a missionary situation with a handful of others. We were the first in this group to go to this place, and each of us had some pastor, late pastor of renown, who was indoctrinating that person. Not together. We were all, we all would go off on our own with that particular previous pastor who had passed on, who was indoctrinating. It was a brief indoctrination, actually. And for me, as I was outside, who came to do this with me was Pastor Steve Hill. And when I saw Pastor Steve Hill, and I saw him coming to me, and he looked at me, the when you have a job, and have you ever worked at a job where you really connect with a particular coworker, and you hit it off, and you worked a long time, so you have this relationship history going back, an unspoken relationship history. So it's your friends, coworkers. And this was the situation when I saw him, and his eyes met mine. I lit up inside, smiling, because this is my favorite coworker coming to me. So he was coming in order, and it was what the situation I understood. He desired to do this. He desired to be the one to give me this indoctrination. And in hindsight now, I look back knowing that this was a situation God ordained, since it was a significant date for him. So, as I said, October 8th being the birth date of his son, who's also in glory with him. So Steve Hill, and I called him Steve in the dream, he came up to me to take me into this small building that I was standing outside. And this building, like I said, was small. It was maybe about 400 square feet. It was simply a rectangular cement building of a desert tan, and in front of it was a wall that appeared to be wood. Just for decoration purposes, I don't know. But then when Steve came, we went inside this room, and the room had a lot of desks that were empty. So when I say that I was getting indoctrinated by Steve, it wasn't where I was sitting in a classroom with others and he was in the front. This really was a one-on-one indoctrination tutorship. And like I said, it wasn't to be long, but it was important. And almost like, in a way, it was like a support system. And Steve spent the time talking to me, and the reason he was doing this is because he himself had prior experience in this kind of situation, and he could give me the insight and the advice. So we were in this classroom. I wasn't sitting. We were actually standing, and we were walking slowly around as he explained these things to me. In fact, sometimes we bumped shoulder to shoulder. So it really was one-on-one. It was personal, and sometimes we would be face-to-face, and he was explaining these things to me. And inside, because I was with a beloved coworker, I enjoyed the whole thing. I was smiling inside, and he also was enjoying telling me these things like you would when you spend time with like I said, a beloved coworker. And what I understood is I was going to go on a missionary kind of assignment. I was actually going to travel to there with these others who were there themselves off some different place with their pastor who was in glory, but taking the time to explain to them what we're doing, what they're going to do independent. So what one leader was telling some other person in that small group that we were in, I have no idea. We were all privately being, though at the same time in that complex area, being given this indoctrination. And when it was over, I understood I was going on a mission as like a missionary group. We're actually going on a missionary assignment. But I have to say now, I'm not the kind of person who would volunteer for a missionary assignment. I don't have a passport. Okay, at my age, I'm 60 now, I wouldn't go myself do this. So this really has to be something symbolic that is like missionary work. Someplace that I was going to evangelize, because it had to do with evangelizing. Someplace where I was going to evangelize. I was going to go take message into a land and a situation that was like a missionary jungle where this message was not known. This message may not even be received, and it was risky to do it. Like missionaries who go into dangerous territories where the gospel is not welcomed, not known. And this is a kind of situation this represented. Not that I was actually going to go in real life, get a ticket and go off to some foreign missionary, because I would not do that. I'm not. So this has to be something like it. And I can only imagine it has to do something with internet, going into evangelizing into terrains that are like jungle missionary work, where the word is not welcome, it's dangerous to do it, and risky. Now, and tell you the truth, in the last couple of years there have been development against freedom of speech for evangelizing the Christian biblical truth. So I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but as far as the dream's concerned, I know from my own profile, I myself will not literally go there, so it has to be in a way like a Daniel situation. Now, the other thing I wanted to say is also interesting to me. This is the second time I've had a dream with Pastor Steve Hill, where I know he's in heaven. He has come as Steve Hill, who is heaven resident, to interact with me. So this was the same situation. All the pastors that were there were pastors who passed on, and they were here mentoring for this particular missionary dangerous work. People on earth who were part of this pioneer group, or were the first group, because there's going to be others following. And what this revealed is that the Lord still keeps people on assignments that are important and critical to salvation, critical to the Lord's missions, to those on the other side of glory. They're not sitting around there until all is completed, where the new heaven and earth are come to be, we're all going to be participating on both sides. The saints who are in heaven and the people who are still here. The Lord, this showed to me that we are proactively doing things there. And what Steve was assigned to me, because there's a connection that we have concerning the spiritual avalanche. And so then after this happened, I then went off in a vehicle to go to this place. And as I did, I was driving past the house where my parents lived. And it was at that moment that I was downloaded the end of the situation. And what I was given the information was, as I passed my parents' house, is that when I would go off to this missionary situation, it would end with my being martyred. And my parents would be in mourning because they would have to bury me. They would have to live with this knowledge, and it would grieve them. And that is what distressed me. That's what woke me up. In fact, when I woke up, I said to God, I don't like this dream, because I didn't like, I wasn't concerned really about being martyred, but I was concerned about my parents grieving. I didn't want them to be grieving, because my parents are 89 and 90. The Lord has blessed them. I have several children, and not one has passed on, not one immediate children, though we have had losses in the family from all ages. My parents have never had the loss of any child. In this situation, I was the first that they were going to have, and it was because of a reason that would be particularly tragic to them, because I was going to be martyred for what I was doing. And because of that, that's what woke me up, and that's what kept me from remembering. And that was, however, a very small part of the dream. So, like I said, all the same, that situation doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be martyred, but perhaps I will be, because we are coming to the time of the last days. It's going to be like we are going into the jungle, to the riskiest part of missionary, in our own land, in our own cities. Such is going to be the condition, the hostilities against the faith, that it's going to be, without even leaving our own places, it's going to turn into the risky terrain of evangelizing in remote jungles. Some will be martyred. We know this because Revelation says so, that there will be some who will be martyred. And so that is the scenario of how this could happen, because it really is in a way symbolic of what is going to be unfolding for all of us Christians. All of us Christians is going to be, without us even leaving, is going to turn into as if we are in dangerous missionary assignments. Those of us who continue on evangelizing the undiluted, unpopular truth, we're going to be as if we are in dangerous jungles,